these guys, maybe they're making like high six-figure NIL deals at some schools and stuff like that. They don't make the NBA. Now, like, what is, hey, we can get you $8K a month to play in Turkey going to look like? And, are they going to be wanting to do that? And it'll be very interesting to see from that perspective how many people, kind of go on the grind. And again, there are guys that get overseas and get really good money and do very well, but there's typically a grind to it where you kind of get over there, make a name, kind of upgrade league, upgrade salary over a couple of years, usually to get maybe to the high-end stuff. And I think it'll be very fascinating to see, what type of appetite these guys have to continue playing if they've, gone 3-4 years in a college setting, making $1 million or $700,000-800,000 a year, and that money's not available because you're not in the NBA, and what's in front of you is a lot less than you were just making.
This is now a glorified JUCO. This is like Norfolk State Community College, because it's like when I say that, not because of the people or things like that, but it's just the way it is. JUCO coaches, I have so much more respect for them these days, because they have to get a new team every year or every 2 years or something like that, right? Now we got to get a new team every year, every 2. So we basically a glorified JUCO, because these kids, until mid-majors, and not just Norfolk State, until mid-majors get the money that high majors have, we're never going to be able to keep kids here, for a long time. I say it's easy to get them, it's hard to retain them. You can get them because there's a lot of kids that want opportunities. A lot of kids want opportunities, but once they get the opportunity and then they blow up, it's harder to retain them because now the big boys are going to come.
Yeah. So, that was them talking about this new NIL, and all of that good stuff, and especially on the HBCU level, because I've seen the two of the top players already enter the transfer portal, and it's it's just crazy because basketball is much worse than football, especially for the smaller schools. Because your high volume scores are the guys that are really good, like the guys that scream like I'm a good player. The bigger schools are just on top of them, man, and they can just get to a number that you just can't match.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen. I don't see how that's going to change.
No, he's 100% right. I mean, it's been a topic that's been running through the tournament, because again, we haven't had many mid-majors do much of anything in this tournament. Right now, I think your highest seeded team that's still alive is I believe Arkansas, who's a 10 seed, but it's John Calipari and it's SEC school. So you're not going to have that. And what he's saying is 100% right, because if a mid-major recruits a kid, develops him, or just recruits successfully a kid that's kind of just plays above the level of the team, he's going to get more money to transfer. And the reality is what you had for a couple years in the prior generation is you had the best schools in the country recruiting like literally teams of 5-star guys and rolling out 4 and 5 freshmen in your starting 5. And that was what you were doing. And then you'd get to the tournament and you'd play a Butler or a Norfolk State that had, starters and kids that had played together for 3 or 4 years, and they'd pull an upset.
Yeah.
And that's just not going to happen anymore, because anybody that's doing heavy lifting at a smaller school is going to get that opportunity. And, you look at the way some of the schools have constructed themselves, in particular Duke. Like Duke brought in 3 highly regarded freshmen that all start and play big minutes, but they also kind of bolstered that team with 3 or 4 transfer guys from smaller schools that had experience and kind of a playing resume. And now they have a 32 and 33 and 3 team that's potentially favored to win the rest of the tournament.
Yeah.
And again, like this past weekend, Walter Clayton was brilliant.
Yeah.
He started his career at Iona with Rick Pitino. Rick Pitino joked that he had no money to offer him, and he ends up at Florida, and he's having a great Final Four moment, and likely will be a first-round pick, I think, at some point in this next draft. And that's just what the game is now. And so but I mean, I don't think that they're like when he's talking about, well, we have to get a new team every year like the JUCO guys.
Yeah.
The reality is that is every team.
Yeah.
Whether you're Kentucky or North Carolina or Duke or you're Norfolk State. Every year we are dealing with new teams every single year.
Yeah.
You have to go find a new team. And that's the reality of college basketball. Is it good for college basketball? Probably not. You have no continuity. And again, you wonder, like the best of the best are always going to shine. But you wonder on the development side, how many players will play 3 to 4 years of college basketball at 2 to 3 different schools and really be that much better at the end of that period, when there's no coaching continuity, no developmental continuity. And, will those guys just kind of like tap out as good NIL guys on decent teams by the end of their 3 or 4 year run, and not guys that are able to go to the league and do anything or contribute, or not?
I mean, I think it's been more of the same. I think you're gonna still every year get the same, 50 to 100 guys that are gonna go to the NBA, and everybody else in whether it's college basketball or football, they got to go into the workforce or go find a job in their field. So I mean, it does kind of, as far as like from a viewing standpoint, it does kind of make it hard to follow, more specifically college football, because the turnover is so high. But for these guys that are not even going to sniff the league, hey, go make your money. Go bounce around. Go start at a small school, and then if you can get a bigger offer to go play at a bigger conference school and go do your thing, go do that, because this is probably the end of the road for you as far as athletically playing at a high level, with this type of exposure, with this type of, money that you're going to be able to generate, all these things. So from a viewing standpoint, I do sympathize, and like I do understand that it's like, all right, well, you can't, it's kind of hard to follow who's going where's going who, but go make your money, dog. Go make your money, because I mean, how many opportunities in life do you have to make that type of money? Even if you're in a good your major, you make a lot of money. How many times do you get offered millions of dollars to go do anything, let alone play basketball and get the exposure and get all the perks that come with playing at a big school? As far as the tournament, I think this year the upsets are, obviously they haven't been happening as much, but I mean, once you get to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, it's usually the same bunch of schools anyways that are going to be there. Your Blue Bloods, you'll have, a few other teams sprinkled in here and there, but for the most part, it's, usually the same crop of teams that are going to make it to the Final Four, Sweet 16, all those things. So I think that it feels like this year might be a little bit of a one-off. If it continues to be a trend as far as smaller schools not getting the upsets as much, then I feel like it'll be more of a conversation to be had. But as of now, it does seem more of just kind of like a one-off. At some point, I feel like there will be some more regulations. It seems like every year they are putting more stipulations on how often you can transfer, the amount of how money is being exchanged and all these things. But overall, I think it's, go make your money where you can, because who knows if you're ever going to have this opportunity again.
No, I mean, I get the point. I'm not saying not to get money. But I do think that without changes in how this stuff is handled, we are going to see fewer and fewer Cinderella runs in the tournament.
Yeah.
I just, without change, and I'm not saying you have to change it. It just is going to be what it is.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of things that I think are very interesting. I mean, the amount of people that actually make to the NBA is very limited.
Yeah.
But what is going to be kind of very interesting, and I remember talking to a couple of our friends who play overseas now. It's like, these guys, maybe they're making like high 6-figure NIL deals at some schools and stuff like that. They don't make the NBA. Now, like, what is, hey, we can get you $8K a month to play in Turkey going to look like? And, are they going to be wanting to do that? And it'll be very interesting to see from that perspective how many people, kind of go on the grind. And again, there are guys that get overseas and get really good money and do very well, but there's typically a grind to it where you kind of get over there, make a name, kind of upgrade league, upgrade salary over a couple of years, usually to get maybe to the high-end stuff. And I think it'll be very fascinating to see, what type of appetite these guys have to continue playing if they've, gone 3-4 years in a college setting, making $1 million or $700,000-$800,000 a year, and that money's not available because you're not in the NBA, and what's in front of you is a lot less than you were just making. And I do think you're going to see, you'll see a lot more kids play out the 4 years and take the money, like for that period of time. Guys that are not NBA guys, that they're going to be first-round picks and have some guaranteed contract money. a lot more players are just going to say, hey, whatever, I'll, if whatever, Kentucky or who's going to pay me $600,000 to play next year, might as well do that. I'm not going to get drafted in the first round. I'll just ride it out. That's
at the top schools, though. And the smaller schools and the mid-majors, they're just totally screwed.
Oh, they are. Yeah, and that's why.
There is no path.
Without fundamental change, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Any of their best players are going to have to go up to get money, and they're right to do so. And they literally do not have the finances to keep these players. No. And again, the best thing that you can do, and it's not very appealing, is you got to be that school that recruits the undervalued high school prospect and gets him and gives him that showcase for a year or two, and hopefully you win something out of it before they move on.
You have to be the glorified JUCO. But not only that, I mean, and then also you're going to have to really open it up. You have to take all of the guys with the bad grades. You're going to have to be the actual JUCO. The bad grades.
The guys with the question marks.
Yeah. The guy who shot his baby mama. All of those guys.
Although, and I don't know, I'm assuming there's still some sort of academic criteria to qualify to play in Division I. Well, they haven't. I mean, until they do,
they're gonna have to fight it. They're gonna have to fight. They're gonna have to fight to change rules
to do that.
Because all of the rules that are in place now, like you said, currently, that doesn't benefit them at all. You know what I mean? Like I just looked it up because I remember faintly, but like Norfolk State, again, HBCU, like they got in as a 15, 16 seed.
They lost to Florida in the first.
No, that was this year.
Yeah.
But they won one, like not too far in the long ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe like 8-9 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And there are more smaller schools that we just talked about that have won, and like you said, Final Four, Elite Eight, all of the same guys. But then, if that's going to be the main case, then why are we watching the first Thursday, first Friday? Why are we watching? If the number 16 seed, 15 seed is automatically going to destroy the smaller school, why watch it?
No, and that's a fair argument. And overall, and again, I do think this aspect is a bit of a one-off. Like, we literally only had in the first weekend, which actually, in reality, the majority of games are played in that first weekend of the whole tournament. We only had one buzzer beater, and that was the Patrick Queen.
Yeah.
You didn't have a lot of crazy finishes in any of the games that way. So that was a bit disappointing. But I do think that falls into a little bit more of a one-off category as far as that goes. But I think you're right. They're going to have to push for probably rule changes on both ends of things and maybe some revenue sharing. I don't know what you could do. Yeah. But the other thing, like John's guy, the Drake guy that he highlighted to us. So that guy, Coach Drake, got him into the tournament. They were like 31-3. They had an upset in the first round. He literally brought 4 or 5 players from his Division II team into Division I who all played significant minutes, and they had the success they had. And they lost the second game. He's getting the Iowa job. So now he's going to be in the Big Ten and have an opportunity to have some money to pay guys and whatever. Yeah. And Drake is going to be like literally, in a canoe without a paddle, because all those guys he brought were older dudes. And they're all out of eligibility. Yeah. And then if he has any young ones he likes, he'll probably take them to Iowa. And
I think we need to start moving, and just because of the way that basketball is going, I think college, whether it's the NCAA or they come out and kind of, branch off and do their own thing, kind of how football's doing, and have their own committee and all these, they need to start leaning more to doing like the European style of having these basketball academies. Just use the universities as those, instead of the G League and all that shit, because, G League's great, but who's really watching? And at least with college basketball and the NCAA tournament, there is that highlight, that spot to kind of showcase what you got and build stars going into the NBA draft and kind of have some type of momentum with that. And the way that, we saw, with a lot of these European players that are coming over, they're playing, with adults from 14, 15, 16 years old, and they come into the league all ready to go. They, some players have, they have the upside like a Luka, like a Jokic, like a Giannis, and, they're able to develop into something more. But, you get a lot of these guys from Europe that are, kind of plug and play, ready to go, from day one in the NBA. And it seems to be working over there in Europe, and the way that the game is going, how the world's catching up, I think it would be beneficial especially for domestic players for us to adopt that system and build our domestic players so then the gap isn't as close as it has been in recent years.
The problem with that the developmental system though is that you cannot utilize the universities to do that. And again, the way that system works is that it is the professional team, like Real Madrid basketball.
Yeah.
And they get the kids when they're 8, 10, 11, 12 years old. And that they know, so they know the ones that are going to develop and have the thing. And they protect and nurture that development, largely without the fear in those younger ages that someone's going to snatch them away.